There is something I need you to pay close attention to before you dismiss tonight as just another ordinary moment on the calendar, because what is unfolding is far more meaningful than a routine lunar shift. I know you have probably heard people describe countless astrological events as life-changing, and after a while, those words begin to lose their impact. This time feels different to me. After spending weeks carefully examining the astrological landscape of August 2026, one realization kept becoming impossible to ignore. Most people are preparing for the wrong thing because they are looking at the surface while missing the deeper movement taking place underneath it. That is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with you now, before everything becomes obvious in hindsight. Tonight, on August the 4th, the Moon enters Taurus. At first glance, that may seem completely ordinary. The Moon changes zodiac signs every few days, and normally that transition comes and goes without attracting much attention from anyone except dedicated astrology enthusiasts. Yet this particular entrance arrives in the center of one of the most concentrated astrological patterns I have seen in a very long time. Once you recognize the larger picture surrounding this moment, the way you approach the remainder of this month may change entirely. What fascinates me most is not only the portal everyone has been talking about, but the quiet preparation occurring immediately before it fully opens. That preparation has already begun. The energy is already moving. Whether you consciously recognize it or not, there is a strong possibility that your emotional body has been responding long before your logical mind found the words to explain it. If the past 24 hours have brought an unexpected wave of insecurity, if financial concerns suddenly became heavier than the circumstances actually justify, or if a strange emotional weight settled into your body without any obvious trigger, I want you to stay with me because there is a very specific astrological reason for that experience. None of this is happening without purpose. Before we can understand why tonight carries so much importance, we first have to let go of the idea that this is simply about the Moon spending a couple of peaceful days in Taurus. I believe we are standing inside one of those rare cosmic intervals when everything you have quietly invested your heart, your patience, and your persistence into finally has the opportunity to solidify into something tangible. Dreams that once felt distant may begin taking physical shape. Efforts that seemed invisible may finally reveal their value. Seeds planted long ago may finally break through the surface. What makes this period even more remarkable is that only 3 zodiac signs appear to be positioned to receive the strongest expression of this energy. Later, I will explain exactly which 3 signs those are, and why they occupy such a unique position within this unfolding story. Before we arrive there, however, we need to examine the event that has already begun laying the foundation beneath everything else, because the abundance portal does not simply appear out of nowhere. Something important happens first, and once I understood its role within the chart, everything else suddenly made perfect sense. On August the 3rd, Chiron stations retrograde at 0 degrees Taurus. If Chiron is unfamiliar to you, astrologers often refer to it as the wounded healer because it symbolizes the deepest emotional wounds carried throughout our lives. These are rarely temporary hurts. More often, they are patterns that have traveled with us for years, sometimes since childhood, sometimes inherited through generations, shaping the way we respond to success, love, safety, and our own sense of value, without us even realizing it. When Chiron reaches a station, appearing almost motionless in the sky before beginning its retrograde movement, its symbolism becomes dramatically intensified. Imagine a brilliant light suddenly focusing on the one place inside yourself you have spent the longest trying to avoid. Every belief you buried, every fear you quietly normalized, every old emotional scar you convinced yourself had already healed is gently, yet unmistakably, brought back into awareness. That process can feel overwhelming because it removes the distractions that normally allow those wounds to remain hidden beneath everyday life. What gives this station extraordinary significance is its exact position at 0 degrees Taurus, the very threshold of the sign itself. Taurus governs your relationship with self-worth, your connection to financial stability, your physical body, your material resources, and your overall feeling of safety within the tangible world. Symbolically, it is as though Chiron has positioned itself directly at the entrance to abundance and pauses before allowing anyone to continue forward. Instead of immediately opening the gate, it asks a question many people spend their entire lives avoiding. Why do you believe you are unworthy of what waits beyond this doorway? Think carefully about your recent thoughts, because this energy may already be speaking through them. Perhaps you noticed a quiet inner voice insisting your plans will probably fail, even though there is no concrete evidence supporting that conclusion. Maybe you experienced an uncomfortable tightening in your stomach whenever money crossed your mind, accompanied by an irrational expectation that something terrible must happen, even while your life appears relatively stable. Maybe anxiety has been lingering without attaching itself to any single event, leaving you emotionally exhausted while struggling to explain exactly what is wrong. I know that feeling because I have experienced it as well. For a time I searched for practical explanations, yet none of them fully accounted for the emotional intensity I was sensing. Only after returning to the astrological chart did the pattern become unmistakably clear. What feels like random anxiety may not be random at all. It may not be evidence that you are failing, losing control, or imagining problems that do not exist. I believe Chiron is performing the very work it was always meant to perform, by bringing ancient scarcity beliefs back into conscious awareness, so they can finally be recognized instead of silently directing your life from beneath the surface. The most important truth I want you to carry with you today is that this process should not be mistaken for punishment. The universe is not placing obstacles in your path because you are approaching something beautiful. In many ways, the opposite appears to be true. The discomfort itself may be preparing the ground for what comes next. The abundance portal opening today cannot fully express its potential, while the unconscious belief that you are undeserving continues operating in the background. Those hidden beliefs have to be revealed before they can be released. That is exactly what Chiron is inviting you to do. The experience may feel uncomfortable because genuine healing almost always asks us to acknowledge what we previously avoided. Yet discomfort does not mean you are moving in the wrong direction. It may actually be evidence that something profound is finally shifting. If you have allowed yourself to remain present with these emotions instead of escaping them, if you have chosen honesty over avoidance and awareness over denial, then you have already begun participating in the transformation this moment requires. That inner work is not separate from the abundance waiting ahead. It is the doorway that allows you to reach it. And understanding that truth prepares us for everything that unfolds next. Before tonight arrives, there is something you need to understand, because the moment waiting ahead is far more significant than another routine movement of the moon across the zodiac. At exactly 10:30 tonight, on August the 4th, the moon enters Taurus. And while that may sound like another ordinary astrological transition to someone casually following the skies, this particular shift carries extraordinary weight. In astrology, Taurus is the place where the moon reaches its exaltation, the position where its qualities are expressed with the greatest strength and stability anywhere in the zodiac. That single detail changes everything about how this transit should be understood. The moon governs your emotional landscape, your instincts, your inner sense of protection, and the quiet voice inside you that recognizes truth long before your mind can explain it. It rules those invisible reactions that tell you whether you feel safe enough to trust, to open your heart, or to step toward an opportunity. Under ordinary circumstances, the moon reflects constant movement. Its energy rises and falls with remarkable speed. Emotions fluctuate. Confidence appears one moment, and uncertainty follows the next. Your inner world becomes fluid, adapting to every experience and every external influence. That constant motion is simply the moon expressing its natural rhythm. Yet everything changes the moment it enters Taurus. Instead of being swept away by emotional waves, the energy begins to settle into something remarkably steady. It is almost as though the moon releases a breath it has been holding for far too long. The emotional noise gradually softens. Endless mental loops lose their grip. Fear no longer dominates every possibility. In place of that internal turbulence comes a quiet strength, one that allows your nervous system to recognize safety instead of constantly anticipating danger. That shift matters more than most people realize, because only from a place of genuine stability can you truly receive what life has been trying to place in your hands. Receiving is the lesson hidden inside this entire transit. Many people have spent months believing that every breakthrough requires more effort, more pressure, more sacrifice, and more relentless pushing. They have convinced themselves that if they simply work harder, force more outcomes, or refuse to rest, abundance will eventually arrive. Yet the moon entering Taurus offers an entirely different message. It gently reminds you that there comes a moment when striving must give way to allowing. There comes a point when your responsibility is no longer to chase every opportunity, but to become available for what your previous efforts have already created. It whispers that perhaps you have already planted enough seeds, carried enough weight, and demonstrated enough commitment. Now the invitation is to stand still long enough for the harvest to find you. That lesson alone makes tonight remarkable. But another layer of symbolism deepens its importance even further. The earliest degrees of Taurus occupy what ancient Arabic astrologers identified as Al-Thuraya, the lunar mansion connected with the Pleiades star cluster. Across centuries of astrological tradition, this region of the heavens earned a reputation unlike almost any other because it became associated above all with the multiplication of blessings and favorable outcomes. Ancient writings describe this mansion as a place where deeply held aspirations begin taking visible form, where wealth expands rather than merely appears, and where patient labor finally starts producing meaningful returns. Those descriptions were never centered on instant gratification or effortless success. Instead, they emphasize growth that becomes enduring because it develops from foundations already laid with consistency and persistence. When the moon reaches its exalted position, while simultaneously activating this particular lunar mansion, the symbolism becomes exceptionally powerful. The emotional world represented by the moon, the physical realities associated with Taurus, and the broader cosmic timing represented by the lunar mansion converge into a single window that strongly favors tangible and lasting manifestation. This is not the energy of temporary excitement or dramatic overnight transformation. It is the energy of something real becoming solid. It is the moment when invisible preparation begins expressing itself in visible results. If you have quietly continued showing up for your goals even when nobody applauded your progress, if you have remained committed despite long periods without external validation, then this transit may feel less like sudden luck and more like long-delayed confirmation that your steady effort has not been forgotten. There is another truth hidden inside this moment that deserves your attention because the path leading toward this abundance portal has not been peaceful. Another force has been building beneath the surface during the past several days, and that force involves Black Moon Lilith. As the days unfolded, Lilith formed challenging aspects with Venus, the Sun, and Mars. Those are not minor planetary interactions. Together they create tension, involving the very planets that symbolize desire, identity, and personal motivation. Your heart, your sense of self, and your ability to take action have all been placed under considerable pressure at the same time. Earlier today, that pressure intensified as Mars reached a direct opposition with Lilith only hours before the moon enters Taurus tonight. Understanding that sequence helps explain why so many people have recently felt emotionally unsettled without immediately recognizing the source. From my perspective, this entire configuration functions like an uncompromising question posed directly to your soul. It asks what you genuinely want once every mask has been removed, not the goals you adopted because they earned approval, not the dreams that appear responsible or humble enough to satisfy other people, not the carefully edited version of your desires designed to avoid criticism or judgment. The question reaches much deeper than that. It asks what your heart still longs for after every expectation imposed by family, society, fear, and conditioning has been stripped away. For many people, that question immediately activates discomfort because they have spent years believing there is something spiritually wrong with wanting financial stability, material comfort, beauty, pleasure, or a peaceful life. Somewhere along the way, they absorb the belief that true worth requires endless struggle, that abundance must always be earned through suffering, and that openly desiring prosperity somehow reflects selfishness rather than healthy self-respect. If those beliefs sound familiar, you are not alone. I believe these recent Lilith transits have been exposing exactly those unconscious programs. They have been tearing open assumptions that quietly shaped your relationship with receiving without your awareness. Naturally, that process creates resistance. It may emerge as unexplained frustration, sudden irritability, unexpected anger, or restless energy that seems impossible to direct. You may have found yourself reacting more intensely than usual, becoming impatient with people around you, or carrying a sense that something inside wants to break free even though you cannot fully identify what it is. Those reactions do not necessarily mean you are moving backward. They may simply reveal that old conditioning is refusing to release its influence without a struggle. The beliefs that taught you to minimize your needs, silence your ambitions, or apologize for your dreams rarely disappear quietly. They resist because they have defined your inner reality for so long. Yet this is precisely where tonight's exalted Taurus Moon introduces a completely different frequency. Its energy does not strengthen self-denial, disguised as humility. It does not reward shrinking yourself to make other people comfortable. Instead, I believe this abundance portal responds most strongly to honesty. It responds to the courage to admit what truly nourishes your life, what genuine security means to you, and what kind of future you know in your heart you are worthy of creating. If you have been lowering your expectations out of fear that your dreams were excessive, if you have been pretending your deepest desires do not matter because asking for more felt uncomfortable, then let tonight become the moment you release that habit. Before the moon fully settles into Taurus, allow yourself to acknowledge your authentic vision without shame or apology. Because the clarity you claim before this doorway opens may become one of the very reasons you are able to walk through it when the next stage of this journey begins. There is one more layer to this astrological story that cannot be overlooked, because it explains why the energy unfolding now does not end with the moon alone. In many ways, the moon may be opening the doorway, but another planet determines what ultimately grows from the opportunities created during this period, and that planet is Venus. Since Venus is the ruling planet of Taurus, every time the moon travels through Taurus, Venus becomes the governing influence behind the entire experience. Astrologers describe this relationship by saying Venus acts as the dispositor, meaning it directs the expression, the tone, and ultimately the outcome of the lunar transit. Understanding that connection changes how we interpret everything happening now, because the moon may establish the emotional atmosphere. Yet Venus quietly decides how those emotional intentions take shape in the physical world. At this moment, Venus occupies the late degrees of Virgo, a placement traditionally recognized as its fall, the place where Venus expresses itself with the greatest difficulty. On the surface, that might sound discouraging. It would be reasonable to wonder whether the weakness of Venus somehow diminishes the remarkable promise carried by the exalted Taurus moon. At first glance, the contrast appears almost contradictory. How can such a powerful lunar position coexist with a ruler temporarily operating from one of its least comfortable locations? The answer lies not in where Venus remains today, but in where it is about to go. Only 2 days after the abundance portal opens, on August the 6th, Venus leaves Virgo behind and crosses into Libra. That transition is extraordinarily meaningful because Libra is Venus's own domicile, the sign where its qualities are expressed with complete confidence and natural authority. In one graceful movement, Venus travels from its most challenged condition into its strongest and most harmonious expression. Symbolically, it resembles someone who spent countless months working quietly without recognition, refining their gifts away from public attention, only to suddenly step into the place where everything finally aligns and their value becomes impossible to overlook. That dramatic shift gives enormous significance to whatever intentions you choose to establish while the moon moves through Taurus, because the seeds planted during the portal are not left unsupported. They are carried forward by a Venus that is becoming progressively stronger. What begins internally on August 4th gains momentum as Venus reaches Libra on August 6th and continues unfolding afterward. The movement from effort into visible reward becomes much more natural. Situations involving relationships begin flowing with greater ease. Financial discussions that previously stalled may begin finding practical solutions. Agreements waiting for the right timing can finally move toward completion. Partnerships become more cooperative because the energy surrounding mutual understanding improves. There is a growing sense that social harmony and material progress begin reinforcing one another instead of competing for your attention. That symbolism reveals something especially beautiful about this period, because the abundance connected with this portal does not appear isolated or disconnected from human relationships. The influence of Venus in Libra suggests that prosperity arrives through interaction, cooperation, and shared purpose. It points toward opportunities created through partnerships, collaborative projects, meaningful conversations, mutual support, and balanced exchanges of energy. Rather than encouraging the image of success achieved alone, this transit reminds us that some of life's greatest rewards emerge when people build together instead of standing apart. The kindness you extend, the trust you develop, the willingness to contribute sincerely, and the openness to receive support in return all become part of the larger pattern unfolding around you. There is profound wisdom in recognizing that abundance often grows strongest when it circulates rather than remaining isolated. That realization prepares us for another question many people have been asking, namely, which zodiac signs stand to experience this remarkable alignment with the greatest intensity? Earlier, I mentioned that this portal offers something valuable to everyone, because the exalted moon represents a collective opportunity rather than an exclusive event. Even so, astrology also teaches that planetary geometry distributes energy differently across the zodiac. Certain signs experience more resistance, while others receive these influences with remarkable ease. During this particular configuration, 3 signs occupy positions where the flow is exceptionally direct, and those signs are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. If your sun, moon, or rising sign is Taurus, the symbolism surrounding this period becomes especially powerful. The moon enters your own sign and activates your first house, bringing attention directly to your identity, your physical presence, your personal direction, and the way you move through the world. This activation becomes even more significant because it occurs precisely where Chiron has just stationed retrograde. That means healing and reward become intertwined within the same experience. The place where old pain has been exposed also becomes the place where restoration begins. Instead of asking you to separate struggle from blessing, this moment allows both to exist together. The very wound that demanded your patience becomes connected with the medicine capable of transforming it. For many Taurus placements, The abundance emerging now is likely to reveal itself through concrete developments rather than abstract emotions. Financial systems you have patiently maintained despite slow progress may finally demonstrate their lasting value. Real estate matters that required persistence can begin falling into place. Career foundations you continued strengthening while others doubted your direction may suddenly become visibly secure. You have often been the individual who refused to abandon long-term commitments simply because immediate results failed to appear. While others walked away, you remained steady. This period suggests that such persistence begins generating returns far greater than they initially seemed capable of producing. The symbolism grows even richer because the solar eclipse arriving on August 12th activates your fourth house. That connection indicates much of the abundance emerging now may naturally extend into your home and family life. Improvements involving your living environment may become possible. Long-standing family matters could begin finding resolution. The emotional and physical foundation supporting your future becomes stronger, creating the sense that every other area of life finally has something stable upon which to build. There is a feeling that what you have patiently earned is finally becoming tangible enough to experience with complete confidence. If Virgo appears prominently in your chart through your sun, moon, or rising sign, the exalted Taurus Moon illuminates your ninth house, an area associated with expansion, higher education, publishing, international opportunities, broader perspectives, and the willingness to see beyond immediate circumstances. This symbolism carries particular significance because Virgo possesses an extraordinary gift for precision. You naturally notice details other people overlook. Systems, organization, careful planning, thoughtful analysis, and continuous refinement often become your greatest strengths. Yet the same qualities that make you remarkably capable can sometimes keep your attention fixed so closely on individual pieces that the larger opportunity remains just outside your field of vision. You become so devoted to improving every small element that you hesitate before embracing the wider horizon calling your name. During this transit, the exalted moon in Taurus offers something different. It provides emotional steadiness that encourages you to lift your gaze beyond the immediate task. Instead of questioning every next step, you begin trusting the larger direction. Instead of remaining trapped within endless refinement, you recognize the moment has arrived to expand what you have already built. The confidence emerging now is not reckless or impulsive. It is grounded, practical, and deeply connected to reality. It allows you to stop measuring every possibility through uncertainty and begin recognizing the scale of what has quietly been waiting for your attention. That shift in perspective may become the very factor that transforms careful preparation into meaningful growth as the next phase of this astrological story continues to unfold. If you've been quietly developing a talent, refining a craft, or improving a service without much recognition, this may be the period when you finally begin to understand how much larger your audience can become. The work you have been perfecting in private is no longer meant to remain hidden. What once felt like something serving only a small circle now carries the potential to reach people far beyond anything you originally imagined. The careful attention you have invested in every detail has not been wasted. Instead, it has been preparing you for a much wider stage. That possibility becomes even more meaningful when you look at what follows this portal. On August 22nd, the Sun moves into Virgo, and on August 25th, Mercury joins it. Those two shifts create an important continuation of the story that begins with the Taurus Moon on August 4th. During this portal, you gain the expanded perspective. You begin recognizing opportunities that previously seemed too distant or too ambitious. Then, as the Sun and Mercury enter Virgo later in the month, that broader vision transforms into practical execution. Ideas stop existing only in your imagination and begin taking shape through thoughtful planning and precise action. Strategy becomes movement. Inspiration becomes structure. Every careful adjustment you naturally excel at suddenly serves a much larger purpose. This is one of Virgo's greatest gifts. The ability to transform a meaningful vision into something tangible through patience, organization, and intelligent refinement becomes fully supported throughout the remainder of the month. If Capricorn is prominent in your chart through your sun, moon, or rising sign, there is another message that deserves your full attention because the past period has likely demanded more from you than most people realize. Saturn, your ruling planet, is currently retrograde in Aries, and that influence has probably felt unusually heavy. The determination that normally carries you through every obstacle has not disappeared. Your ambition remains intact. Your willingness to work harder than almost anyone else is still very much alive. Yet despite all of that effort, familiar methods may no longer be producing familiar results. The path that once seemed reliable has become unexpectedly complicated, creating frustration because you are someone who instinctively believes perseverance can solve almost anything. When discipline alone stops producing immediate progress, it can feel as though the ground beneath your confidence has shifted. This is precisely why the Taurus Moon activating your fifth house carries such powerful symbolism. The fifth house governs creativity, joy, romance, self-expression, and calculated risk. It invites an entirely different relationship with success than the one many Capricorns have learned to trust. Rather than asking you to work harder, it gently encourages you to experience life more fully. Rather than insisting every reward must be earned through struggle, it suggests that fulfillment can also emerge through pleasure, inspiration, and genuine enjoyment. That lesson may be one of the most difficult for Capricorn to accept, because you often associate value with endurance and sacrifice. You have spent so much time climbing the mountain that stopping to appreciate how far you have already traveled may almost feel unfamiliar. Yet this transit offers exactly that invitation. It is as though the universe quietly reminds you that reaching the summit also includes the freedom to pause, breathe deeply, admire the landscape, and allow yourself to experience satisfaction without immediately searching for the next challenge. The abundance available to you this month appears connected with softening rather than forcing. It grows through creativity instead of constant pressure. It expands when you pursue opportunities that genuinely inspire you instead of obligations that simply exhaust you. The risks worth taking now are the ones that awaken your enthusiasm rather than drain your energy. I believe many Capricorns will discover that allowing joy to participate in success produces results every bit as meaningful as relentless discipline ever did, and perhaps even more surprising than you expected. As remarkable as this portal may be, it is equally important to understand what comes afterward, because the story does not end with the Taurus Moon. I would not feel comfortable describing the promise of this period without also acknowledging the powerful astrological events waiting just ahead. On August 12th, a total solar eclipse occurs in Leo, and on August 28th, a lunar eclipse arrives in Pisces. Together they mark the beginning of a significant eclipse season, and eclipses rarely represent quiet or predictable energy. They often serve as powerful turning points that close chapters, open entirely new ones, and reorganize life in ways that cannot always be controlled. The solar eclipse in Leo brings attention to your relationship with confidence, leadership, creative self-expression, and the identity you present to the world. It challenges anything that has become performance instead of authenticity. Masks that once seemed necessary may no longer feel sustainable. Roles adopted to satisfy expectations begin losing their purpose. You are encouraged to release versions of yourself that no longer reflect who you truly are beneath the surface. Later in the month, the Pisces lunar eclipse reaches even deeper. Its influence begins dissolving emotional patterns that have quietly shaped your inner world for a very long time. Old karmic residue rises into awareness. Feelings buried within the subconscious seek acknowledgement. Emotional cycles that have repeated themselves without conscious understanding become visible so they can finally be released. There is a profound cleansing quality surrounding this eclipse, one that gently removes what no longer belongs in the next chapter of your journey. This is exactly why the Taurus Moon matters so much. The emotional stability and material security you begin cultivating now are not simply pleasant gifts arriving before the eclipses. They become your foundation for navigating everything that follows. The abundance activated through this portal is not limited to financial or external reward. It also creates inner steadiness. It strengthens the emotional roots that allow you to remain centered while larger transformations unfold around you. The patience you have practiced over such a long period has never been only about waiting for prosperity. It has also been preparing the resilience required to remain balanced when life begins changing at a much faster pace. If you have wondered why meaningful support seems to arrive just before eclipse season intensifies, I believe there is purpose in that timing. You are receiving emotional, financial, and spiritual resources before the landscape begins shifting, so that when powerful transitions arrive, you are equipped not merely to endure them, but to emerge from them stronger, wiser, and more grounded than before. As tonight unfolds and the moon enters Taurus, I hope you remember that every opportunity still requires your participation. A doorway opening does not automatically change your life unless you choose to walk toward it. There is no need for complicated rituals or elaborate ceremonies. The most meaningful practice during this transit is simple presence. Allow yourself to become still. Create enough silence to hear your own truth without outside expectations interfering. Ask yourself what you genuinely desire beneath every layer of social conditioning, modesty, or fear of judgment. Not the version of your dream that feels safest to admit, but the one that continues returning to your heart no matter how often you try to silence it. If there is something you have patiently nurtured through steady effort and unwavering consistency, give that intention clear form today. Write it down. Speak it aloud. Allow it to exist outside your thoughts and become something tangible within your reality. The last 24 hours may have felt emotionally heavy, as Chiron stirred old beliefs connected with scarcity, self-worth, and the question of whether you truly deserve what you have been asking life to provide. Rather than seeing that discomfort as evidence that something has gone wrong, consider the possibility that it confirms something meaningful has already begun moving beneath the surface. Healing often feels uncomfortable, precisely because old limitations are losing their influence. You have remained patient. You've continued showing up even when recognition failed to appear. You continued believing in the process when visible progress seemed painfully slow. I truly believe that beginning today, the universe starts revealing why every moment of that persistence mattered. Before we finish, I simply want to thank you for spending this time with me. It genuinely means a great deal that you stayed through this entire journey. If this message connected with you, and you would like to continue exploring these astrological movements together, especially as eclipse season approaches, I would sincerely appreciate your support by subscribing to the channel. Your support helps more than you may realize. I would also love to hear about your own experience, so please leave a comment below. Have you already noticed the emotional intensity connected with Chiron today? Have you been carrying that unexplained heaviness, or feeling that something important is shifting beneath the surface? What intention are you bringing into this abundance portal? I take time to read every comment because I truly believe we are all moving through these remarkable cycles together. Take good care of yourself, and I look forward to sharing the next part of this journey with you very soon.